The theme of this yin practice is Stardust sculpting. Like any yin practice, support is helpful. So if you want to gather up some props that might be valuable to you, you can get things like a couple of blankets, maybe a pile of books, maybe sturdy hardbound books, and possibly a couch cushion, and even a chair to lean into. And then the practice we'll begin with a little bit of breath work, and then a straightforward yin sequence. As we begin, take a moment to find a comfortable seat. It can be sitting cross-legged, like I'm sitting, or it can be sitting some other way, something that's accessible. We're starting the practice with some breath work, so it needs to be something that is accessible and comfortable for you for about 5 minutes or so. Here you can use props, maybe an extra blanket under an achy knee, and then allow yourself to arrive. Do this by noticing what's going on around you and maybe inside of you. So listen to the noises around you. Feel the temperature here. Feel the contact points, your lower body with the floor, which symbolizes the earth. Allow yourself to root there. So kind of nest and soften. Maybe for a moment as you inhale, grow your torso nice and long. You'll have to engage some core muscles to do this, so you're reaching the crown of your head up towards the ceiling here. And then once you've grown long, then you can soften your torso a bit, just to allow yourself to give yourself some space to breathe. And then take a few normal, natural breaths. Nothing fancy here. Just your breath. And notice your inhales, notice your exhales. Notice how your torso moves with each breath, with each cycle. And if this is fascinating to you, and this life-critical process should be fascinating to you, you can continue this. But if you would like to deepen your breathing by slowing it down, we can try a modified version of box breath here. So again, place your hands someplace that's comfortable. Shoulders are relaxed here. And if your nose is not stuffy, see if you can just seal your lips and breathe through your nose. If that's not possible, then just keep breathing through your mouth. Maybe begin to slow down your breath by deepening it. Become consciously aware of this breath, moving in and moving out. Now for this breathing exercise that we're about to do, it's meant to slow the breath down. So what we'll do is we'll exhale. And then at the beginning of the inhale, take about 4 seconds to really inhale and fill up. So you can do this to a slow count of 4. So after your next exhale, when you inhale, fill up to a slow count of 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. 4, 1,000. When you get to the end of your inhale, pause for a second, and then exhale to a slow count of 4 again. So as you're emptying out, count to yourself 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. Pause for a second at the end of your exhale, and then see if you can continue. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause for a second, and then exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause for a second, and then inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. You can continue this cycling of inhaling slowly with a pause, exhaling slowly with a pause. If you find this breathing technique too strainful, it's probably not doing you any good. You need to bring yourself back to just watching your normal natural breath. But if you find that the mental focus in this deeper breathing is something useful to you, then continue this for just a few more rounds of breath here. maybe just one more cycle of this breathing. Whatever cycle you're on, finish this with an exhale. And then when you get done with the exhale, bring your mental focus back to just a normal, natural breath here. And continue to breathe normally here. And we'll get started with the yin sequence. So the first yin posture in the yin sequence is known as half butterfly. So what you'll do is you'll maybe lean back, put your feet on the hands on the floor, extend your legs out, and then kind of just shake your feet out to kind of wiggle around and move around a little bit here. So point and flex the toes a few times, maybe bounce the knees up and down, and then keep your right leg extended. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, it can be slightly bent, and maybe you would like to sit up on a little bit of height if you aren't already, if there's a lot of strain in your extended legs and in your back. Otherwise, bend the left knee and lower the left knee gently out to the left. As you do so, slowly bring this left heel in towards your torso, just as far as it goes until it stops. Some of you, it won't stop until it hits your hips. Some of us, it's going to stop before it does that here. And then once you've done that, stop and notice what you're feeling. If you're feeling a lot in the legs and in the hips, hopefully it's not painful. Maybe you just stay here. Nice, neutral, straight spine. And you can enjoy the posture this way. Otherwise, the second phase of this posture is to fold forward. So what I like to do is I like to grow nice and tall here. And then I hinge forward from my hip sockets, which is low, low, low down here. Now, maybe you don't go very far or anywhere at all, but once this is done, then soften the muscles in your torso. Let your spine round. Let yourself hang off of your connective tissue as you stop wherever you stop. So you're trying to find your edge, and your edge is internal. It's basically where you start to feel some traction here. So this is half butterfly. This is where you will stay. So stay here if this is allowable for you to stay. Otherwise, if this is too strainful, this is where you gather a prop. So you can maybe take a chair, place it in front of you, lean up against a chair. You can have couch cushions or maybe a tall pile of books that you can rest on here. Whatever you need to feel supported. Maybe this knee is achy. Maybe support underneath that knee. Maybe this leg is achy. Maybe you need to bend it more and support it more. So again, if you're finding this really, really strainful, injurious, hurtful, painful, then find the props that you need to make this comfortable. Otherwise, we'll stay here for a few minutes. So the mechanics of yin, there's three basic principles to yin practice. The first principle is called finding your edge. Now, since we all have different and unique and diverse bodies, each of us has a different edge. So the final shape that this takes will be slightly different for each one of us. We're moving by feel, so what you want to do is stop when you feel enough traction, pressure, sensation, feelings, whatever your words for it are. And then you take the attitude of softening and accepting where you're at and noticing where the sensations are. This is all finding your edge. Second principle is called stillness. So once you've found your edge, you become still. You cultivate the deep patience and fortitude to stay for a while. And then the third principle is time. So time is what does the work here. Physiologically speaking, the exercise here is we're exercising yin tissue, which is connective tissue, bone, ligaments, joint capsules, and fascia. And all of those things love light, long-held traction. Thus the reason why we come into a pose where we naturally stop and we stay and we soften and we breathe and we become patient. This is challenging because there's this big brain of ours that tends to get a little crazy here. And so it is challenging. It is challenging to stay here. We have about maybe one more minute here if this is okay. If this is getting too achy, you can always invite yourself out of a posture early. So you're not trying to force yourself to stay in the posture for as long as I tell you to. You stay for a minute, maybe 2 minutes in these sequences, in these videos, I'm kind of holding postures for about 3 minutes or so. If things are too intense, invite yourself out. If you're not feeling anything anymore, then see if you can sink a little bit more deeply into the posture until you regenerate all the sensations that you're feeling here. So 2 underlying foundations to yin is relax the muscle fiber so that the stress and the pressure can go into the connective tissue system and then stay for a long time. So that's thus the reason why we're residing in these postures for so long. So just a couple more breaths here in this side of half butterfly. When you're ready to come out, you'll go ahead and plant your hands. Use your hands and your arms to lift your torso up if you did the forward fold. Maybe lengthen your torso up. And if you feel any kind of achy sensations, maybe some gentle motion to work them out. So I like to do twists. Twists kind of feel pretty good after a long forward fold. But maybe you want to do some lateral bends, or you can put your hands behind your torso and lift your sternum up towards the ceiling. And then bring yourself back to center. Maybe you're still half butterfly leg. Maybe this left leg wants to come out. So gently bring it out and then wiggle the legs around. You can point and flex the feet a few times here. So there's always this counter pose time in between the long held yin postures. Some time where you can just rest or kind of wiggle around to work out the stagnations in the posture. And then when you're ready, we'll start with the next side of half butterfly here. So again, you'll just sit with legs extended out long. And then this time, left leg's extended. Bend the right knee gently and lower the right knee over to the right side. Draw the right heel in towards your torso as far as it goes. Maybe you need support somewhere on this side. Grow up tall through your torso for a moment if you're going to hinge forward, and then hinge forward and then soften and round your spine on this side just as far as you go, again until you stop. And don't worry about what you look like. Worry more about what you feel like. This doesn't have to be comfortable, but it does have to be pain-free. So when you're feeling anything that feels injurious, that's a red flag that you've gone too deeply. So we'll stay here now for a few minutes here. Notice your breath. Notice your sensations. See if you can be very allowing of the present moment here. So the universe is made up, as far as solid atomic matter is concerned, the universe started off and is still composed mainly of 2 atomic elements. They're the 2 lightest elements in the periodic table. One is hydrogen, which is 75%. The other one is helium, which is 20 to 25% of the makeup of the universe. So most of the solid matter, atomic matter, made up of those 2 elements. And then there's a smattering of all of the heavier elements. And the question is, where do those elements come from? Well, it turns out it's stars. Stars make those heavier elements. So when the stars are born and when they live in their bellies and their cores. They're fusing. They're all made of mainly hydrogen and helium. And in the cores of the stars, the hydrogen fuse into heavier elements as the stars live their lives. That's what generates the energy in the middle of stars. So as they fuse together, they make hydrogen makes helium, helium makes larger atoms, until you get into lithium, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. Do these sound familiar? All being made in the centers of stars. So for smaller stars, or normal-sized stars like our Sun, stars generally fuse atoms very easily up to carbon. And that's what our Sun will do. It'll generate up to carbon near the end of its life. But supermassive stars, stars that are much, much larger than the Sun, they keep going. They make even heavier and heavier elements in their centers. In fact, this process continues until they fuse up to elements as heavy as iron. And then when they get to iron, the whole process kind of breaks down, because when they get to iron, when you fuse iron, it no longer makes extra energy. It takes energy to make elements heavier than iron. And so when the star has completely depleted its core and it's entirely made of iron, there's nothing to generate energy anymore. And when that happens, the whole process collapses here. So just a couple more breaths here. Maybe after this next breath, you can slowly start coming out of this side of butterfly. So plant your hands, use your hands and your arms to slowly press yourself up to seated. And then when you get up to seated, this is the counter pose time. So when you get familiar with this practice, you'll start kind of doing whatever organic motion that your body is craving. But if you don't really know what to do, maybe start out with some twists, maybe bring that right knee up, extend it out, again, wiggle the legs around. You can do something pretty vigorous, like you can do some sort of core work or yang work to kind of wake up the muscles that went to sleep here. So you can do things like reverse table here. So press your feet in the ground, push your arms into the ground, and you can lift your torso, your hips up towards the ceiling. Keep your neck tucked if your neck is sensitive here. Otherwise, you can come back down here. You can do what's called the hinge maneuver, so you can make your way onto your back here. Head, neck, shoulders, all very comfortable. And then lift your legs to point up towards the ceiling. Arms alongside your torso on the ground for stability, and then with your core engaged, very slowly lower your extended legs over. So this is not yin yoga, this is yang yoga here. And then at some point your heels touch down onto the ground here. Maybe stay here for a moment. Otherwise we'll set up for the next yin posture. The next yin posture is called Cattail Pose here. So for cattail, you will start lying on the ground here, legs extended here. And then for cattail, step number 1 is to take your left extended leg and raise it up towards the ceiling just as far as it goes until it stops here. And then lower your left leg over to the right, so you're stacking your left hip on top of your right hip here until that left foot reaches the ground. Make your way onto your right side. So I'm on the right torso, and then I can rest your head into your hand, into your forearm here. This is stage number 1 for cattail. So if you're feeling a lot here, allow yourself to stay here. Stage number 2 is bend that bottom knee, reach back with the top hand, and grab that right foot with the left hand. Maybe this is enough. You can kind of pull on that foot to get a little bit of a thigh stretch here. Stay here, or you can release your head and melt your left shoulder back towards the ground as far as it goes. It doesn't have to make it to the ground. But now we're coming into a little bit of a spinal twist. So find your version of cattail. And then once you've found that, we'll stay there. We'll just stay here in cattail for a couple of minutes here. So somewhere between about 7 to 5 billion years ago, there was a supermassive star in our local neighborhood that lived out its life. It used up all the material in its core that it could fuse for energy. made it all the way up into iron, and then there was no more energy to stop the collapse of gravity. And so then star imploded, and then it exploded in one of the most energetic explosions in the entire universe. It's known as a supernova type 2. And so that's how supermassive stars end their lives in this gigantic explosion. So this star, roughly 6 billion years ago, ended its life. And in this energetic process of the supernova explosion is the energy to create even heavier elements than iron. So all the elements heavier than iron that exist in nature were created in those massive supernova explosions of stars here. Things like strontium, silver, gold. These are all created in that massive supernova explosion. So about 5 more breaths on this side of cattail. It's getting a little bit too achy. Maybe back yourself off a little bit. If it's not feeling like anything, maybe ooze yourself a little bit more deeply into this posture here. So all of those elements after massive stars die are just floating around in space in these clouds of dust and gas for a while. Until they collect, they condense, and they become dense enough that they start to recollapse. So maybe just one more breath here. And then we'll slowly come out of this side of cattail. So if you have this bottom foot clasp, release the bottom foot first. Maybe bend the top knee and drag that top leg on top of the bottom leg. And then when you roll back onto your back, it's so much easier to do so. And then from here, a little bit of time to just work out the kinks from that side of cattail. So there's a lot you can do here. You can give your knees a gentle hug. Maybe you can rock from side to side. You can do gentle windshield wipers. Put your feet on the floor about hip width apart, or maybe slightly wider. And then just nod your knees back and forth here, just to work out the kinks of that side. Again, this is a pause between the two sides of cattail. We will sit up for the other side of cattail. So go ahead and extend your legs out long again here. Nice and comfortable on the floor here. And then it's the other leg this time. So raise the right leg up towards the ceiling as far as it goes. And then lower that right leg to the left all the way down until that right foot is on the ground. Inch yourself onto the left side of your body. So you can start out just resting your head again in your hand here. Evaluate to see how this feels. If this is pretty intense, just stay here. Next stage, bend the bottom foot, reach back with the right hand, see if you can find that left foot. Stage number 3 is melt the right shoulder back down towards the ground, any amount until it stops here. Head and neck can be released. By the way, if your head and neck are too kinked, you can always grab a pillow, stuff it underneath your head so it's more comfortable here. And then once you find your cattail here, we'll go ahead and reside here for a couple minutes on this side here. So a little over 5 billion years ago, all this gas and dust that was created, these heavier elements that were created by the death explosion of a supermassive star, recollected and recondensed, forming our own solar system, our own sun, all of the planets, including Earth, and everything that's on Earth, including ourselves. So we're made. We come from this stardust. Our bodies are composed of all these atoms, the cells, the molecules, the individual atoms that make up everything in our bodies come from either stuff that was made at the center of a massive star, or the material that was created when that massive star died. If you look at the composition of a human body, you'll notice that there's a trace amount of gold, naturally occurring gold in the human body. This all came from a star a long time ago. We're all made of this stuff. Every single molecule and cell in our body is ancient, predates everything, it predates Earth. So about 3 more breaths here. If you're okay with this, if you're kind of getting too achy in this, you can come out. Otherwise, maybe stick around. 1 more breath. And then when you're ready, you can slowly release the foot. Bend that top knee, drag it on top of the bottom leg, and then you can slowly bring yourself back onto your back. And then wiggle yourself out of any kinks, any reverberation that you might be feeling from that side of Cattail Pose. So you can do windshield wipers, you can hug your knees into your chest, you can also simply just rest here. And then when you're ready, make sure your knees are bent, feet are on the floor, gently roll over to one side and make your way up to seated. When you get up to seated, we'll get set up for our next yin posture. This is called shoelace, and we'll do shoelace with a lateral bend here. So a prop that might be helpful here is some height, some stable height. In this case, maybe grab a pile of books. I find large hardbound books work the best, but if you only have softbound, then maybe some larger formatted softbound books here, just to use sort of as a block here. And then make your way to seated. Again, if there's a lot of strain in your legs or your lower back, then maybe sit up on a little bit of height. Start out with the legs out in front for shoelace here. So from here, bend your left knee and then stack your left knee on top of your right knee. Maybe you have to move that right leg over a little bit. So left heel's over on the right side of your hip here. This is called half shoelace. Now you can just stay here if you wish, or you can bend the bottom knee, sweep the right heel on the outside of the left hip. So you're kind of trying to stack the knees. Now this was meant to be a hip opener, so we're trying to feel stuff in the outside of the hips. If the knees are feeling sharp, biting, torquing, burning, then you need to rearrange the knees. You need to place some support underneath the knees, or maybe just come out of the posture here, completely here. If this doesn't work for some people, and it won't, then your option here is called eye of the needle. So you'll make your way out of shoelace. Slowly make your way onto your back. Bend both knees. Put your left ankle on your right thigh. Left knee is bent and out wide. Now you can just stay here with the right foot on the floor. Or if you want a little bit more oomph, you start drawing this right leg into your torso. You can hug behind the thigh, clasp your hands around the shin. And you just draw things in until you're feeling enough. That's where you stay. So this is a nice alternative to shoelace. So that's an option. But if you're doing shoelace, then come back into your version of shoelace here. Now we'll add a lateral bend to this. So place your stack of books here on the left side, kind of right behind that right foot here, and maybe out away a few inches. Grow up tall through your torso, and then laterally bend over to the left side. You can start out by reaching this left arm out and just placing it on the ground here. Or if you have your stack of books here, you can rest your elbow on the books, and then you can maybe rest your head in your hand. So if you want to rest your head and your neck on your forearm, then maybe you vary the amount of books you put here to find the right amount of height. going to your stopping point. And we want to be in a gentle lateral bend here. So you can do other things with this other arm. This right arm can reach up and over. You can just let it hang out here. You can just leave it alone. What I like to do is bring it behind my torso because that helps to keep this right shoulder lifted and it keeps me more in a lateral bend here. So if this is feeling like something you can maybe stay in for a minute or two, then stay here. If you're not liking the lateral bend, remember you always have the option of just staying upright, nice neutral spine here, or you can fold forward any amount. And be sure you put any support underneath you if you need it. So we'll stay here for a couple more minutes on this side here. And now all you have to do is stay if you want to. So in our bodies, there is all this connective tissue, including many deep layers of fascia. This fascia material, it surrounds and supports our muscles, our joints, our skeleton, our internal organs, and there's several layers of it, and it's continuous. It's not separate material, it just inhabits the whole body. It goes all the way from our head all the way down to our toes. So we have several layers of these. You can think of it as silken body stockings of this white fascia. We used to ignore it, but medical science is discovering that it serves a purpose that's very important, and its properties are different in living tissue than the white stringy stuff that you might associate with fascia. And more we're discovering just how important it is. We used to ignore it, but not anymore. That fascia is made up of all of this collagen fiber, this collagen protein that's produced by these cells called fibroblasts. Fibroblasts create the fascia, create a lot of the connective tissue in the body here. So we have about 5 more breaths on this side here. If this feels appropriate, if you're kind of getting really desperate, you can always come out. Always just stay here a little bit longer. Now when fibroblasts create these collagen fibers, they're kind of like a spider. They're just throwing these threads of collagen out in random directions. So they feel the pressure, they get some communication from other cells from the body that they need to start doing something. And so what they do is they start throwing out these collagen fibers. And they kind of do it in a random spider-like matrix that isn't terribly organized here. So one more breath here. And then you can slowly come out of the lateral bend first. So take this left hand, place it on the floor, and then press yourself up to seated. Oh, that might be achy. And so maybe you want to wiggle around in your torso to work out the achiness. But probably our legs and our hips are wanting to come out a half shoelace. So reach back with your hands, lean back and slowly undo the half shoelace legs. Oh, point and flex the feet a few times, wiggle your legs around. I like sitting windshield wipers for after this pose. So put your feet on the floor, bend your knees, feet go wide, and then slowly lower your knees to one side, bring them back up to center, lower them over to the other side, and maybe go back and forth a few times just to loosen up the hip sockets after that long pose. And then bring them back up to center, extend them out long, any other kind of motions here. And then we'll set up for the other side. So take your height, place it on the other side. And then from here, bend the right knee, stack the right knee on top of the left knee. You can stay here. This is a perfectly good pose. It's called half shoelace. Or you can bend the bottom knee, bring it around here. So we're stacking the knees opposite direction here. If this is not working for your hips, then maybe eye of the needle on this side. So again, just quickly here, for eye of the needle on this side, lay on your back, feet on the floor, knees bent. This time it's the right ankle on the left thigh, right knee is bent and out wide. You can stay here with the foot on the ground, or you can draw the left leg in any amount here. Otherwise, back to shoelace here. So, again, you can just stay here, enjoy the hip opener. You can fold forward, but if you did the lateral bend on the first side, probably should try the lateral bend on this side. So maybe grow up tall through your torso, and then slowly laterally bend over to the other side. Maybe adjust the height of the books and where they're at so you can rest your elbow. Find your stopping point. Maybe rest your head in your hands. You don't have to rest it in your hand. You can let it hang if that feels okay. Decide what you want to do with the left hand and the left arm here until you found your edge, your shape here. And then we'll stay here a few minutes on this side. So it turns out, every time we move, not just in yin yoga, but every time we move the body to the point where all of that random collagen fiber feels a pressure, it begins to organize itself. It begins to line up in the direction of the pressure. So instead of this random just pile of connective tissue, you get a more organized system here. And that organization of the fascia feels to us like an increased range of motion. The tissues can slide more easily along each other. And so that's why if you practice any kind of yoga or any other kind of movement practice, really, you're organizing this fascia in the directions that it feels the pressure. So you're training it. You're actually sculpting it here. And even in yin, since we're here for a really long time, we feel that pressure. We're creating a very light pressure on that fascia that runs through our joint capsules, and it sends signals. It sends signals to all the cells where that's feeling pressure. It wakes up the fibroblasts, and the fibroblasts get busy, and they start to work, go to work. Maybe it even wakes up the osteoblasts. Those are the cells in our bones that create bone material. If there's bone compression, then the osteoblasts feel that in what's known as a fancy word called mechanotransduction. And that signals them to get busy and to start making new bone material here. So we have about 5 more breaths here on this side. So check in with how you're feeling. Maybe you need to make a little modification here at the very end here. Or maybe you said, I think 2 minutes was long enough. I think it's time to come out here. So yin is a very allowing practice, very accepting practice here. You get more benefit out of this kind of a practice when you're more accepting and allowing. That means you come out of the posture when you're ready, not when someone else tells you that you're ready. But we can all come out of this posture now if we wish. So at some point, come out of the lateral bend first. Some of you plant that right hand on the floor. Use that right arm to slowly inch your torso back up to center. Maybe move your torso around a little bit, and your legs probably want to be released here too. So lean back enough so it's easy to just kind of lengthen your legs out. Ooh, might feel really good. This is why you practice yin yoga, is to feel the stagnation afterwards and then work it out with some gentle motion. Again, it can be windshield wipers like I'm doing here, or it can be something else. Just whatever's working for you. And then at some point, we'll make our way into the next yin posture. So the next yin posture is a supported bridge pose. And this is where you'll need a prop here. And this is where, if you have a fancy yoga block, you can use a couple of yoga blocks. But if you have books, you can use those in a pinch instead. So have some books handy to generate some height. And for this supported bridge pose, you might want to have a pillow handy to ultimately put underneath your head here too. Maybe watch me getting into this pose. You come onto your back. Feet are bent, or knees are bent, feet are on the ground. And then you're going to lift your hips up and place the height underneath your hips here. So I'll take my books and then I'll push with my feet and my shoulders, lift my hips up. And then I'm placing the stack of books underneath my low back, my sacrum. So that's the back bony part of the pelvis here. I'm putting it there because it's the most stable and supported place to put the books. So it's slightly above my glutes, but it's below my lumbar spine here. And it feels the most stable right there. So if it's a little bit too pinchy up in your lumbar, it probably means you need to move it down. And then get it nice and centered here. And then head, neck, torso is wonderfully relaxed on the floor. Again, you might want a pillow for your head here. Notice how this is feeling. If this is enough of a back bend, then you stay here. Otherwise, try to extend maybe one, maybe both legs out. This will probably increase the sensations, particularly through the middle of your pelvic bone. So this is stretching out the psoas and the upper thighs here. If this is painful, maybe you just want to stay here. Come back to knees bent, feet on the floor. But if you can, extend the legs out and relax the muscles in the legs. Let them release and relax. And then arms relax on either side here. Find a place to be, and if there's too much height, you can always take a book away. If there's not enough height, but this is not high enough for you, add a few books, make it a little bit higher. And then once you've made this setup, then you just stay here. So this is a back bend. We're making this gentle arc here. And what we're doing is we're putting this gentle pressure on the whole front line of fascia, all of that collagen in the front line of the body. And we're doing that by making this wonderful arc. So in yoga class, I call this posture Milky Way pose. I call this Milky Way pose because on a very clear night, dark night, away from city lights, when you can see the stars, you'll notice that band of light known as the Milky Way, which is the spiral arm of our own galaxy, makes this huge arc, graceful arc that moves across the entire sky. You're kind of emulating that night's graceful arc of stars with your own being, with your own body here. So an appropriate name for appropriate posture here. So maybe visualize yourself as those stars. Turns out it's literally true because, as I said earlier, all the atoms that make up your body come from stars who've ended their lives billions of years ago, and now those same atoms reside in you. So we're literally made out of stardust. Now, considering that the collagen fibers of the fascia, the connective tissue system, are made up of those same atoms, and as we move throughout our lives and exercise and practice yoga, and maybe practice yin yoga like this, we are slowly affecting and shaping a lot of that connective tissue over time. So we're sculpting. We're sculpting those very cells, molecules, atoms that were once part, are actually still a part of this great galaxy of ours, known as the Milky Way. all these atoms that come from an ancient star that basically created the elements, the clouds of dust and gas that eventually recollapsed and formed eventually into you and into me. So just 3 more breaths here. Take stock of how this is feeling. Maybe one final breath here. And then when you're feeling ready to come out of this pose, gently bend your knees if the legs were straight. Put your feet back down onto the ground. And then root through your feet and your shoulders. Use your feet and your shoulders to push your hips up high enough that you can reach underneath you. Find your height, your pile of books, and then push them out of the way. And then slowly lower your torso down to the ground here. You can stay there for a few breaths or a few seconds. You can move around a bit here. That was a back bend, so maybe a gentle forward bend might feel nice right now. And you can do that by gently drawing both knees into your torso and giving them a hug. If you do this slowly, you can feel the back of your lumbar spine expand along your yoga mat here. You can do this, you can do other things. You can do reclined windshield wipers, or you can just have your feet wide and let your knees just kind of settle together here. Just rest here for a couple more breaths. And then from here, a little bit of integration before we move into Shavasana here. So again, you can bring your knees in, give them one final hug. You can extend your legs up towards the ceiling. Press your heels up towards the ceiling. So engage a little bit of core muscle and leg muscle to really press your legs up high. You can hold the backs of your thighs with your hands here. Maybe just stay here for one more breath. And then maybe come into happy baby. So knees bend, knees come out on either side of your torso, and then weave your arms in between your knees, and then see if you can either find your shins, your ankles, or maybe the bottoms of your feet with your hands. And then point the bottoms of your feet up towards the ceiling. Take your arms and pull on your feet to pull your feet, your shins, your knees towards the ground as far as they go here, until things stop, until you start feeling some pressure here. Now you can stay here in stillness, or you can gently rock from side to side. Ananda Balasana. Happy baby pose. Bring yourself back to stillness. Any other kind of movements or motions or wiggles that you would like to do. And then we'll move into the final posture of practice, which is resting pose, which is Shavasana here. So there's all kinds of options for this final posture. Remember, the point to this posture is focused relaxation. So you can do the traditional posture, which is just lying on your back here. If this is too uncomfortable for you, then other options. Lay on your side, your legs up the wall. You can also sit quietly in meditation. You can do other things. Maybe your low back or your hamstrings are tight, so you can make a blanket roll. Place it under your knees if your legs are extended to keep the knees soft here. Maybe use a pillow or another blanket underneath your head. And then soften here. So final few minutes of this practice. Just releasing, letting go, feeling again the ground underneath you. Allowing yourself to simply exist in the moment. So soften your legs. Arms are nice and soft. Head and neck are soft and comfortable here. Begin to hunt. Begin to hunt for any residual tension in the body. I like to hunt for it in my head because that's where I like to store tension. So soften your jaw. Release your tongue, the whole inside of your mouth. Soften the skin around the outside of your mouth. Soften your nose, your chin. Soften each cheek, left cheek, the right cheek. Soften the skin around your left ear and your right ear. Relax the muscles around each eye. So soften Soften the muscles around your left eye and the muscles around your right eye. Soften that space in between your eyes, your third eye. Soften your forehead. Relax your temples. Release the crown of your head. Soften your brain. Thoughts are fuzzy and defocused. Well, they'll still be there, but you can become the watcher. Notice, treat your thoughts as if they're just puffy white clouds in a clear blue sky. Thoughts drift in, come over the horizon, they drift through, and eventually, if you can leave them alone, they will disappear on the other horizon. Give yourself permission to have nowhere to go and to have nothing to do. Allow yourself to postpone being a human doing and grant yourself the ability to be a human being. Just exist. Just breathe. Just notice. Collarbones are soft. Shoulder blades are stable. Release your right arm, right palm, right fingers. Left arm, left palm, and left fingers. Bring your attention to the tips of each finger on each hand and see if you can notice that subtle interplay between your capillaries and your nervous system. This slight tingling sensation, this energy that's your own life force in the tip of each finger, left and right. Relax the rest of your torso, so soften your rib cage. Release your abdomen. Continue to soften down through your hips, your thighs, your knees, backs of your calves, the fronts of your shins, your ankles, heels, soles and tops of your feet. Release and relax each toe. Bring your attention to the tips of all of your toes on both feet. And see if you can notice that subtle energy, your own life force, clear down there in the tips of your toes. It can be very subtle. It might require a little bit of stillness and patience, but that's you. Clear down there in your toes. Release, relax, and surrender your body-mind 100%. And then visualize yourself lying in a forest meadow next to large trees. It's spring. There's soft warm grass and wildflower flowers that you're lying on. And it's right at twilight, so the sun has just set. It's getting dark, and as you look up into the sky, you can begin to notice stars starting to appear. It continues to darken. It's perfectly clear. You start to recognize the Milky Way, your own personal configurations of stars, and as you lie there contemplating the soft, cool light of the stars, you notice that one star grows increasingly brighter, dramatically so until it's almost as bright as the full moon. As you lie there witnessing for yourself a star that's turned itself into a supernova, as it's producing all of the heavier elements, all of the things that the universe needs to create life. At some point, begin to deepen your breath and start to make little movements in fingers and in toes. Expand that motion into wrists and into ankles. At some point you can make gentle motion with arms and legs. You can gently rock your head from side to side. From here, gently raise your arms above your head, interlace your fingers, turn your palms to face the wall behind you, and then lengthen out through your arms, lengthen out through your legs. So do a little bit of yang work here, push and pull, just get as long as you possibly can here by stretching, getting as long as you can here. One more breath, and then go ahead and release. Gently bend both knees. Roll over onto one side. When you get there, stay there for a moment. Maybe stay there long enough to begin to generate some gratitude for your efforts, for your practice, but also some gratitude for you, your unique manifestation in the universe, your unique bit of stardust. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're ready, press into the ground with your hands, slowly bring yourself up. Come back to a comfortable seat. Take some time here to establish your roots. Feel the ground, the earth underneath you. Grow your spine long and back to a nice neutral position. And then at some point, bring your hands together at heart center. So I'll end this practice with one chanting of Om. You can either join in or just listen to my voice. The inner starlight in me honors the inner starlight in you. Namaste.